This is Felician Business Talks with Professor Steve Sergi and Professor Doug Muir.
Hello, everybody. This is Douglas Muir, along with my sidekick here, Professor Sergi at Felician University. We'd like to welcome all faculty and students to the #1 radio show. We just dubbed it the #1 radio show, but we're calling it the FBT, Felician Business Talk. And how are you doing, sir?
Excellent, Steve Sergi here. Doing so happy to be here with you guys.
Our first ever, considering it's our first show, but our first ever person that we want to interview is actually a business student, Felician business student, and I just know him as Adrian. How you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Professor Doug?
I'm doing well. Adrian was an outstanding student in my class in presentation strategies for entrepreneurs. I think Professor Sergi, you had him also, right?
He is an outstanding student in my course as well in org behavior.
So what are we doing here today? Well, we found out that there was a radio show here, and we were very interested in taking over the show. I know Dr. Prisco and a few other, the deans are probably cringing because of Steve and I are taking over the waves, but this is almost live. With a 12-second tape, so we could, if we say anything stupid, we could just shut it off. But
that never happens.
That yeah, between me and you. What we really want to do here, folks, in all serious, we want to bring to the airwaves information, education about what happens in a city, the state of New Jersey, the country, and also the world, and how does that affect us?
Otherwise known as micro and macroeconomics.
Right. We want to make sure that the students, like Adrian, have an actual say in their life, because folks, Steve and I, we'd like to say we're in our upper 40s, but that would be a lie. Professor Sergi and I are in our upper 50s, so we're going to be passing this baton, this mess that we have made, onto your generation, and we want to make sure that the freedom of thought, the freedom of education, the freedom of speech is not worrisome to you. Adrian, when we were off, you and I were talking just a little bit off, and you were telling me a couple of concerns about what's about ready to happen in the next 40 years of your life when it comes to education and speech. But what does your generation really want to hear from a radio show? What do you really think about what we could do here to change not just Felician but the world?
I think it's more of a matter of being united as a group. My generation, growing up from 1999 and up, it's just people wanting to grow together. And I feel with the older generations, they're like, oh, you guys are below us, you guys aren't up to our standards, but yet they're the generation that taught us how to live. So if we can unite each other and grow not just economically but socially, we can be a perfect society.
That's a great answer you just gave. And Professor Sergi, I'd like to ask you this. Do you think it's every generation? I remember my mother looking at me going, oh my God, if your generation is going to run this country, we are in deep, deep trouble. Do you think it's each generation looking down at each other saying, they just don't get it?
I don't know. Just don't get it. We always remember our struggles as more difficult than what the new generation's going through, and the stories about carrying water from 30 miles away, standing on a freezing bus stop in the snow. And but we don't talk a lot about the great stuff that happened when we were growing up either. So it's more sensationalism, I think, than anything else. And I'm 62, so if somebody said to me, do you want to go back to being 25? I'd say not really.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I feel so comfortable where I am right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a lot more difficult for this generation because the hyper exposure on social media.
Absolutely.
And, we didn't have to go through that.
Nope.
We did something stupid.
Thank God.
It was in a newspaper for a day and...
Maybe.
Right, then it was gone.
Who's going to find out?
Right.
There's no pictures. There's no cell phones.
No.
Does that worry you at all, Adrian?
I mean, being, not just a student, but, being 20 years old, it's a matter of, when I turned 21 and I decided to go out to drink with my friends, weed being on the verge of it being legal or not legal, not just in the state of New Jersey, but possibly around the country. It's like, can I post this? Can I do that? And then let's say you might be, correct in those standards where you're not going to drink till you're 21. You're not going to smoke weed till it's legal. But your friends might not be thinking like, oh, I'm just going to go have fun. So if you post a picture with them and you're underage,
Done.
It could ruin a career. You who worked in the stock exchange, and Professor Sergi working at BMW in Manhattan, you guys didn't have to worry, didn't have to look so deep into social media. Now you guys can just scroll through my whole life and be like, at 12 years old, he was doing this. It can really affect the way I live my life and the way it's going to affect my future.
On the New York Stock Exchange and on Wall Street, we literally look at people's Facebook pages. We look at your Twitter accounts. I remember being in meetings, people from Georgetown, Yale, Harvard, just top of the top, right? And saying, look at this. How is this going to hurt us if this gets in the media? Don't hire this girl. Don't hire this guy. Because of the social media outlook, I think you said something perfect. You really need to look at that. And I told my son that, who's a lawyer down in Miami, saying, not one drink, not one cigarette, not one anything if you're thinking about running for anything, and he adhered to that. In the academic world, Steve, where you have been now for how many years?
About 15 years.
About 15 years. What kind of shifts, dynamic shifts and change have you seen in students?
Well, because of the instant access to every bit of information at a fingertip, there's less conversation in the classroom, there's less reading, but on the good side, I use it as a tool because that's what our students are used to. So, you have some professors that say, oh, nobody reads the book, and I want a different type of student in my class, and I'm like, this is what you got to work with. So, Kahoot and getting group exercises, teamwork, getting people to stand up and do stuff together. I think, this is what we got. So, there were people complaining about the telephone back in the Bell days, and they said it was going to ruin our society. But, hey, this is where we're at.
I wanted to bring Adrian here because he was one of the top students in my class. Also, he was waitlisted, which was an honor, at the University of Virginia, which is just a tough school to get into. My son didn't even get waitlisted; he got turned down. He was a stud, and being a professor from the University of Virginia, I just wanted to ask you. So, why Felician? Why don't you explain to us?
Felician had its different aspects. One thing as a student, I think I can talk, generally about any person that's looking for college. It's money. Felician is, they blessed me with the scholarship and grants that they give me. But it's also that it's so close to the city. We're just a train ride into Manhattan onto 34th Street. So you're so close to the business capital of the world. And being a business student, going to UVA, is it one of the bigger business schools in the world? Yes. But what can you really do around, Virginia? You have, Washington, D.C., that's probably half hour, 45 minutes away. But I wanted to stay, in the tri-state area because that's something that, means a lot as a business major. And for whoever wants to come in internationally, they say New York City, the city that never sleeps. That's where you want to go as a business person.
What changes have you seen in the last, let's just say, year since you've been here? You're a sophomore, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what changes have you seen?
Well, when I originally came in...
Good and bad. I'm telling you, when Professor Sergi and I talk about having an open mic radio show, we want to know good and bad.
Well, originally, when I came in here, we had, before we had Dean Cristofalo here, we had Dean Bob Evans.
And Dean Cristofalo is the Dean of the Business School.
The new Dean of the Business School. We had Dean Bob Evans. He was originally from the corporate world at KPMG, one of the big four accounting firms in, around the country and around the world. And he looked very promising, but he just wasn't as intuitive and as energetic as Dr. Cristofalo is to, bring the business school on the map. Felician, when people bring up Felician, they say, "Oh, the nursing school." Now, when you walk, now when you walk around, it's like, "Oh, well, business is growing." You have yourself, Professor Doug, and then Professor Sergi, who brought us to the stock exchange where I was able to meet you. And it's just those small connections that's really helping build the business school.
So, Professor Sergi, what have you seen in the last 15 years from when you started teaching to the type of experiential learning, meaning learning from real professors like you who ran big companies, i.e. BMW, people like me from Wall Street and who had their own private equity firm, started and sold 10 companies. Tell me a little bit about what you see, the differentiation between some universities you were at and today.
biggest one is, and I can speak for the School of Business, is that every professor in the School of Business has real world profit and loss experience, and nonprofit, for-profit. That's one thing. The other thing is, I taught at Lehman College in the Bronx. I taught at Baruch in Manhattan.
Baruch, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I taught at LMU in Los Angeles. Over the past 10 years, the level of technology involved with teaching has really, you have to, I always say if you go to the bathroom and come back, everything's changed. So you have to constantly, as a professor, be up on the latest way of assessment of teaching in the classroom using technology, video. It's changing so quickly.
So not just textbooks, right? Because when I put together my textbook, it was an 80-20 split. 80% bought the textbook, 20% was on Kindle, and now it's flipped. It's about an 80-20 with the Kindle and the hard copies.
Yeah, and I try to put
other technology you're talking about.
I try to put as much content on the internet as possible, so there's not a heavy reliance on the reading part. Right?
Got it.
Well, I mean, everybody has a different learning port, right? So when I was a student, reading for me was not my learning port. It was listening and watching video. And I think the ability to play video at any time in the classroom is amazing. And I have students that English is not their first language. So if I say something like, I don't know, some alternator for a car, and they're looking at me like, what is that? I just go to the videotape and I put on a picture of an alternator or a car or whatever. So you have to constantly lecture and technology. So
in the business school, and we just stay right in the business school, we have created with the help, and I forgot the gentleman's name, the CPA, he started YEC.
Professor Lisa.
Professor Lisa, great guy, highly regarded here, also teaches at Fordham University. He started this YEC.
Young
Entrepreneurs Club, yeah. We have 60 members there. Tell us just a little bit about that, Adrian.
It's a club that I'd never heard of, and then you brought it to me one day when we were talking about,
It made you volunteer?
You made me volunteer, and it was a matter of you kind of forcing me on board, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah. That's, by the way, that's voluntold.
Right, voluntold.
I think we're going to be going into break soon, so if you want, I can give a brief description. Essentially, with the 60 members, let's say, we started with 4 of us. It was me, Alpha, Sammy, our president, and Joanna, our vice president. And it was just a matter of, all right, let's grow it. Free Chipotle, free T-shirts, knickknacks. And the reason we want to grow it is that at first it started to market out VITA, which is the volunteer income tax assisting, but now it's for the entire business school. It's, so we can help teach you how to make a resume, make a LinkedIn, what do you have on social media, internship possibilities. It's to build those connections that a young entrepreneur needs to be able to become an entrepreneur. And I believe that's something that you can help us bring. And then with Professor Sergi's connections, Dr. Cristofalo, just the business school wanting to be a part of it is going to help us expand and hopefully be
How many events do you have coming up?
Well, we have 3. We have on February 21st from 6 to 7 p.m. in Ed Commons Race Place, which is the resume workshop, where we have a young lady named Megan coming in from Wall Street who makes professional resumes. We have one March 20th.
She's also the head of human resource at Citibank.
Okay.
She's big.
Yeah, she's a big one.
She's the one you want.
And then we have February 21st, 6 to 7 in Ed Commons Race Place. We have the LinkedIn workshop because now most, recruiters are looking on LinkedIn. Everything's online.
Absolutely. And then you have one other one. What was it?
We have the social media and internship one, which is April 4th from 6 to 7 in Ed's Common Race Place, where we'll be providing drinks and free food. For each one of them.
We'll be able to post this up, talking to our producer, Jeff, over there. We'll be able to post this information up on the new website, the Professor Sergi and Professor Muir, Felician Business Talks. So we're going to go off the break right now, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about the new minimum wage in New Jersey and to see how that's going to affect business. And now you are with Felician Business Talk.
Hi, it's Tori DeVito. In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. and we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Felician University, welcome back to the Professor Sergi and Douglas Muir Felician Business Talks. This is going to be a weekly event we're going to do here, and as we were talking about before, we're going to have people coming on that we're going to interview. Right now we have Adrian, who's a sophomore and a student both of Professor Sergi and my class, and is just a stellar student. He's also, what are you on YEC?
I am the secretary and upcoming vice president next semester.
Secretary?
Yes, sir.
And we were just talking about a few events coming up. We'd just like to do a little more house cleaning. We have the VITA event. Steve, do you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. Since it's tax season now, we're approaching, and all the accountants are working 40, 50 hours a day. So we do this thing with Professor Joe Lisa, and it's a federally sanctioned, supported group where our students go out and we help people for free do their tax returns. And we did, I think, 100 tax returns last year.
That's awesome.
We go to the library in Rutherford. But the beautiful thing about this is a lot of people come here who haven't done their taxes in maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Ooh.
They get money back.
Really?
Yeah, they get
including fines and.
Well, when the IRS owes you money, they don't care.
Right.
So we're doing that again, and a lot of the students from the School of Business. And by the way, you do not have to be just from the School of Business, because we need meters and greeters and translators, and it's a great way to have experiential learning, where you're actually with public in a retail situation, which when you ever do that for the first time, it's a little nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is great, safe way of kind of learning how to deal with people and work on numbers, and it's, you don't have to be a math whiz to do this either, because there's a lot of prep. I think, have you done this?
This is my first year doing it. It seems like a great program. You know, over our winter break, the VITA program went over to Professor Lisa's office, which is in Lyndhurst, and we kind of just went over the procedure. There's a new tax form, you know, whole new calendar on how to do taxes this year. So it's a matter of, you know, not just us learning how to do it, but the people who are getting their taxes done. It's, you know, a whole new format. So everyone's in a boat, and we're just hoping it doesn't sink.
And there's also an IRS liaison from the federal government that comes here and helps us.
Wow,
yeah,
really?
It's an unknown program, but the IRS wants this to happen because they want more people to file. So sometimes people can't afford to pay somebody to file.
How long has Professor Lisa been doing this?
This is his 9th year.
Yeah, it's his 9th year.
He does a lot of great work.
He's an amazing guy.
He's been with Felician 10 years?
He graduated with his MBA from Felician University.
Wow, that's phenomenal. All right, ready? Let's get to this. This is the point. I'm reading on my screen here that New Jersey has just raised the minimum wage to $15. If you have a Jeff, if you have one of those things back there where you can have people clap and all that great stuff, then I'm sure some of you would clap. As a business owner, also as a libertarian, it is something that I would like to maybe debate with my friends, but I would just like to talk about it for 1 second. So there's a few states, Steve, that have raised the minimum wage. I believe it's going to do a few things. As a business owner, what I'm going to do, as I did when the Obamacare came in, is when we had to have Medicare medical insurance for 50. I had 53 employees in one of my companies, and I went down to 49. Business people just have to make sure that they survive and they stay alive, and
right.
And so just talking, not right, not left, but let's just talk about how you believe it will affect the New Jersey,
Well,
and the small business owner.
speaking at it just from bottom line, every organization in the world in business worries about just one thing, and that is, Adrian, the P word, profit, right?
Nice, Adrian.
right?
He's been paying attention.
So I give an analogy with the minimum wage is that back Hurricane Sandy, we had shortage of gasoline. So you had lines of people. And I did a little anecdotal research on who was in the line one day. And there was a lot of people who were in line who just got freaked out because they had half a tank of gas, but they didn't drive anywhere. You know, grandma, grandpa just waiting in line. Because gas was artificially, the price of gas was kept low.
Right.
They couldn't raise the gas. And the next day I had a guy driving around my neighborhood in a pickup truck with a 50-gallon cube in the back. And he was selling gas for $15 a gallon. And he was getting it.
Really?
Well, because supply and demand, right?
Yeah, I totally get it.
So you know, grandma, grandpa,
Interesting.
in line, if the gas went up to $8 a gallon, they wouldn't have been in line, would they?
Right.
So the guy who needs the gas is willing to pay the $8, and there's no line. So
Right.
is that supply and demand equilibrium thing? So I think we're doing by artificially raising the minimum wage, right? Is incentivizing companies to replace humans with robots, right? Because now
They did that in Seattle.
yeah, because if ROI, if a 2-year ROI return on investment of a machine that gets rid of people
Yep.
who are now making how much a year at $15 an hour?
31,200.
Yeah, so I'm concerned about people not being able to work at all, and that means the health benefits,
Yeah.
tax revenues. You know,
Is that a livable wage in New Jersey now? I just moved up from Virginia. 31,200. Is that a livable wage?
I don't think so. That's something. It really just depends the area, but I mean, it's difficult. You know, I believe that as a student, minimum wage is something where you can work and get some money, but it's hard to make a livable income supporting a family. It's
Right.
something it's been across the spectrum. It's something difficult for people to say, oh, you should be paying $15 an hour. It's a wage that's not meant to be livable off of.
Right.
And
So they were talking about, if I could just interrupt, they were talking about harming first-time high school students trying to get a job. At $15 an hour, they're not going to hire those kids anymore who, I was at a car wash and I was pumping gas. I think I was getting 55 cents an hour. But gas was 49 cents, right? And so that was my first job, and it taught me how to work.
I had a first job when I was first of all, I was underage working. I think it was 14 or 15.
Yeah.
And I used to get $1.50 an hour, right? And the owner said he had a special permit that allowed him to pay below minimum wage, which was, I don't know about that, but I was happy to have a job. And I have to tell you that the gentleman I met when I was 15 was the reason why I got my entire education in higher education. He was about 8 years older than me, and he was the fire under my butt to get me going because I really didn't want to go to school. I graduated with my 2-year degree in electronics, and I was like, I'm done with school. I hate being a student. He said, you got to go to school. I need you to know stuff. I'll pay for everything.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of soft benefits, soft cost about setting wages at a artificial rate.
Yeah, and most restaurants are going to have to pass that off, right? Being a restaurant owner, we're going to need to pass that down. Also, the next thing that happens is we have our head waiter at Bella's restaurant down in Charlottesville that we just sold in October was making $72,000 a year. I pay medical, dental, eye insurance, 1 week paid vacation, and a gym membership. And I did that not because I had to. It was because I have a 3% turnover rate instead of 34% turnover rate. And I could actually do the numbers to show how much money I save by having a lower turnover rate, but paying benefits.
And also, how much do you pay? You may give your compensation rate at $1,000 a week, but you're paying $1,400 a week for that employee,
right?
Because you got to pay insurance.
Yep.
You got to pay
matching taxes. Yep.
Right. You got to pay
vacation.
Right. So I may see, $700 out of my $1,000 check.
Right.
But you're actually putting out $1,400 to get me half that money.
Yeah, and a lot of people forget that, right? So if you're looking at a small business, they employ a little over 64 million people in the United States. It's a lot, right? And so they're going to start getting squeezed, and it's just going to get passed down to the consumer, the middle class, the lower class, the people who are going to be affected the most. Being a younger generation, 20-ish type of guy. Where do you see a lot of the students your age from other universities coming in more on a socialist Bernie Sanders type of ticket than, let's say, a libertarian or a more conservative? What do you think that's all about?
I think it's more of a matter of people seeing that, countries around the world, let's say like Sweden, where they're like, oh, well, they have free healthcare, they have free dental insurance, they have a lot of free things, but they're like, why can't we do that here? All right, I'm for that. I believe that healthcare is something that should be provided by the government, but I'm also in favor of being taxed about it. Someone's got to pay for it, and, if it's got to come out of my tax dollars so that John Doe on the side of the street who, broke his leg, if he's, is able to get his leg fixed, he should be able to get that. But most people, I feel like there was a survey done by CNN back 2 years ago, and they said that, most people are for universal health care, but they're not willing to increase their tax by, just 10% to see if that was possible. Right. Even though those numbers, 10% really doesn't do much, but they said even by 10% they wouldn't do it.
So he's right. It was an 82% people said, yeah, absolutely do it. If you had to pay an extra $20 a month, would you do it? It went down to 42%. When they said $20 a month, it went down to about 14%.
Yeah, but people don't realize that we are paying for it, because when you go to the emergency room and you got to wait 2 hours because nobody gets turned away, and the prices in the hospitals are going up to cover those costs. So nothing's free.
Right.
And there's also a bunch of, I always refer to the soft costs or the opportunity costs, where because we have so many sick people, we're losing money, and you're paying sick time because somebody doesn't have a doctor to take care of them. And also, by the way, what about preventive care, right? We don't do enough preventive care.
Absolutely. My father-in-law is the Vatican doctor. He's also a brain surgeon in Rome, Italy, and he would say this to me. He'd say, the hardest part about my job is I have somebody that's come in socialized medicine in Italy, and someone comes in and he says, I got good news. I could take out that brain tumor. The bad news is you got 2 years to live, and I can't get you in for 3.
Right.
And so what happens is, and as in Sweden, and as you met my assistant, that was a 30-year hospital nurse, emergency room nurse, it works over there because there's only 10 million people. Everybody is more than I've never seen anyone complain. I've never seen anyone complain about their socialist system. But if you really look, most of businesses over there are 99% private. Yeah. The big business, and they do pay the taxes. The gap is so different. They have this word over in Sweden called logum, Logum, and it just means that it's not too hot, not too cold, not too much, not too little. It's just right. In America, we have 329 million people. It's always the American dream. Bigger is better. This is what we're teaching these kids now, right?
Well, I think that's the misconception that a lot of people see. Coming from an immigrant family, my parents said, we had to work a lot. And, I'm beyond grateful for what they have to do. Yeah. But it's a matter of people saying, oh, you come in through immigration and you get $1 million check. It doesn't work like that. You got to start off with your minimum paying job to grow. Right. So that's people that, it's something that my age group is going to have to get accustomed to, and for us to be able to learn so we can be successful and be, as widespread and open as the American dream was back in the 80s when Reagan and Clinton and, older Bush were in office.
And you're willing to pay more on your taxes to protect those.
To protect those, the least fortunate, yes.
And when you look at it from a pure business, it's not so much a touchy-feely morality is the best way to go here with taking care of everybody. When you take care of everybody, when you educate everybody, you have a stronger, healthier, smarter workforce that makes us in the world leaders in what we do.
So Professor Sergi just led me into Thomas Jefferson. Folks, you're gonna hear me quote Thomas Jefferson a lot, being from Charlottesville and the University of Virginia. It says, educate and inform the whole mass of people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of liberty. And we have 30 seconds left here, and we're going to close it with this. We're going to get telephones in here. We want to hear what the students and the faculty really have to say at our Felician Business Talk Radio. So from Professor Muir to Professor Sergi and our wonderful Adrian student, we hope to see you next week.